Tochter aus Elysium. Wir betreten feuertrunken himmlische dein Heiligtum. Deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode strenge teilt. Alle Menschen werden Brüder, wo dein sanfter Flügel weilt. Deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode strenge teilt. Alle Menschen werden Brüder, wo dein sanfter Flügel weilt. In die große Not gelungen, eines Freundes Freund zu sein, wer ein volles Heil errungen, biete seinem Loden an. Wer auf nur eine Seele sein, der auf den Wegen Lust, festige und die Stille meinen sich aus diesem Mund. Tochter aus Elysium, wir betreten feuertrunken himmlische dein Heiligtum. Deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode strenge teilt. Alle Menschen werden Brüder, wo dein sanfter Flügel weilt. Deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode strenge teilt. Alle Menschen werden Brüder, wo dein sanfter Flügel weilt. In die große Not gelungen, eines Freundes Freund zu sein, wer ein volles Heil errungen, biete seinem Wir betreten feuertrunken himmlische dein Heiligtum. Deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode streng geteilt. Alle Menschen werden Brüder, wo dein sanfter Flügel weilt. Deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode streng geteilt. Alle Menschen werden Brüder, wo dein sanfter Flügel weilt. Find die große Not gelungen, eines Freundes Freund zu sein, wer ein holdes Heil
Was it the best you ever had? Was it the worst you ever known? I'm gonna tell you what I think and play it up like it's a joke. No more surprises. Yes, it's like this. I'll do anything for you. Miss His Highness.
Puppets, sociopaths, Oscar is best girl enjoyers. Welcome to another episode of Stream of Consciousness. I'm your host, John McGowan. Brian's not joining us tonight, so it's like, you know, when everyone leaves you alone at the party and you get control of the aux cable. I thought I might play around with the intro videos for once. So that was fun. Thanks for joining us for another exciting Tuesday. A week of just a week of weird news, right? A lot of weird shit around. To start with, though, I want to thank some of you for reaching out to me after last week's episode. It's kind of funny that those of you who sledged Ross the hardest in the chat were the ones who DM'd me and told me how much they secretly enjoyed that. But we're not going to do it every week, but I think it is important for we, the vanguard of the intellectual deep web of Australian radical right politics, to hear from guys who don't always agree with. I mean, Ross is an incredibly interesting guy, and he said some extremely interesting things. I don't agree with him on stuff on geopolitics or on immigration or on the fact that he thinks I need to start breeding, which if anyone who knows me in real life knows that's something that should never happen. But yeah, I think we had a really interesting discussion. That was fun. But yeah, we're going to, for the foreseeable future, go back to our usual scheduled programming of buggerizing around. While we are here this very instant, Paul Brereton from the National Anti-Commission Against Corruption is giving evidence to the Senate estimates inquiry. He is having the absolute shreds torn off him by David Shoebridge. He has not asked for my phone back yet, but I think David will get there eventually. This is a really big vulnerability for the government. I mean, this is like their major achievement, right? This is what they said they were going to do to all their weird blue drip supporters and Dan Andrews stands. This was their big favor to them. This was the sop to the online centrist cohort. And it all went pear-shaped. They didn't do anything. They didn't arrest Scott Morrison. You know, they didn't shut down the tunnels, the Ricardo Bosi tunnels. So, yeah, it's one to watch. Like, obviously watch my show. Don't watch estimates. But it is going to be pretty interesting to see what comes out the back of that. People saying that I look different in the chat. That's actually just because I'm using a better camera tonight. I don't know. You probably heard me complain about myself for a while that I just refused to move all my shit onto I have a nicer laptop, so I finally got around to doing that. So that's why I look a bit more high resolution, I think. Also, I got some new hair stuff today, like a really cool, like it's like a hair serum that I think is making it look more kind of volumetric or something. But yeah, thanks for noticing, guys. Glad to know people actually watch it live and you're not just wandering around with headphones in. The first thing we got to cover right off the bat, the funniest story of the week is, of course, let me get it up here, guys. You guys got to enjoy this. And you got to see it as it was intended with the notice headline. One Nation MP cries, thanks Indonesian Muslim boyfriend in maiden speech. This was crazy because it broke out of Australian containment, and I saw like big US accounts retweeting this all week, which is super embarrassing for everyone involved. Look, I don't know the guy from a bar of soap. I can make some assumptions about him based on what we know about One Nation South Australia. This was, I'm not even going to play it. I was originally going to play it, but I'm assuming you guys have all seen it at this point. Look, in all seriousness, we've talked about this a few times. One Nation really need to get on top of their candidate selection. Like, you can almost excuse this one in a way because this was their first big campaign. Maybe they didn't have their shit together. I mean, we know they didn't have their shit together in that one. They still did amazingly well. I think what I was saying for months in the lead up to it was, the big test was making sure they stuck to their polling numbers, right? And they did. They stuck. I think they ended up with like 24, 25%. And, they should have tried harder with those candidates. Like, they really should have. Because that one's just so bad. Just the optics of it. Like, I get what they're trying to do. They don't want to look like the reactionary right party. They want to look like the party for everyone who just has a grievance. I get that. But those grievance people, they don't care. The grievance people are going to vote for this guy anyway. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Actually, there's a really good video. I might try and pull it up later. What's his name? The Greens guy, Matthew Mandler Sanders. You remember the one? What was the guy's name? Remember he had double-barreled surname that kicked him out at the last election. Anyway, I saw him doing a speech recently, and he was talking about going up to One Nation voters and talking to them. And he was quite sensitive about the whole thing. And what he said was these guys were saying, I just want to blow the whole place up. I want to start over. I hate politicians. I hate the major parties. We need something different. That cohort of voters is not going to care that you elect the immigrant-loving guy with the Indonesian Muslim boyfriend. But, like, you guys are going to care, right? And this is how you end up with a split in the reactionary right. This is exactly what happened in the UK with Restore and Reform. And this is what One Nation need to be on guard for. Like, I get that they're going to have some sketchy candidates. Who knows what kind of people long favors over the years. And good on them for being loyal to people who stuck by them through the many decades where they were barely polling 7%. But, they do have to get serious about stuff. It kind of reminded me of 2011 in New South Wales. 2011, that state campaign, the one where they kicked out Christina Keneally, that was one of the biggest landslides in a state campaign in Australian political history. And it was a shock to everyone. It was even a shock to the Liberals who didn't think they were polling as well as it turned out they were polling. And like, when you look at what happened out the back of that campaign, there were so many candidates that got elected and became MPs who should never have been elected, who were just lunatics, who were barely on board with what little passes for New South Wales Liberal ideology, let alone Conservatives, let alone, being in one of the major factions. They were just accidental elections. There was a guy who barely spoke English. There was a guy with crippling depression who left after 12 months. There was Graham Annesley, a very respected sports administrator who just couldn't hack it after a year and a half. There were 4 guys who went out in corruption inquiries for just stupidity, just because a decent political operative would have known not to do the dumb things that they did. And that all came down to the fact that they didn't think they were going to win those seats, and so they didn't care who they pre-selected. And that kind of comes out of One Nation in South Australia. Like, they weren't really caring because I don't think they thought they were going to win. Now, hopefully they've fixed that about themselves. But mind you, I've seen some worrying evidence that they haven't. Today, I was watching Barnaby Joyce on Sky News, and, he can't answer the question, do you want to form government? Not do you think you can form government? But just, do you want to? He was asked this. He couldn't answer it. I really worry that these guys have a self-confidence issue. And, one of the reasons for One Nation's incredible success over the last 6-7 months is that people think they're authentic. People think they're earnest. And look, they are, I think, by and large. But when you look at successful kind of post-reactionary parties like One Nation, like the MAGA movement, it's not just about being authentic. It's also about being confident. Donald Trump's successful, not just because he is Donald Trump and everyone knew what he stood for and he stood in opposition to the establishment political standard. He was super confident. And that's what people want. This is a recent thing in politics too. There was all this data back in the late 90s, early 2000s, this idea that people liked underdogs and that being perceived to be the underdog would get out your base, anyone who might be soft in your vote. A perception of low polling would activate them. This was a feeling for many years, even into when I started in politics. Like, they used to make me take fake polling down to the press gallery and lie to them about how badly we were doing, just to make sure that no one took the election for granted, just to make sure that everyone would put Liberals number one. That actually completely flipped around 2011, 2013, when we started getting better data that said, hey, actually people like confidence. People really like it when you feel like a winner and you look like a winner. And this is what One Nation need to start doing. They can't just, I think they kind of have a buck each way at the moment. They've got this attitude like, I think they actually believe it to an extent. They believe that they're never going to be allowed to pull this off. Like, they're sitting there thinking, they're going to rug pull us. Like, they're going to put Pauline back in jail, or they're going to change the rules, or they're going to arrest everyone for the Muslim stuff or something. They think the polls are going to flip. I mean, they're probably not. Like, these guys, if you've seen the latest polling, the Redbridge stuff, which we're going to talk about later in the show, when you look at the seats, we're talking 59 seats. Now, Labor still will have a majority. And look, and we'll get to it now, but I have problems with Coz's methodology. I don't think it's great. And I think he's massively overestimating preference flow from the Libs to One Nation, because I think that if you're in that absolute rump of voters right now that are still voting for One Nation, are still voting for the Liberals, then you're a never Pauline person, right? If you were going to flip, you would have flipped it already. So I think a lot of Liberals are going to ignore the how to vote card, and they'll put Labor ahead of One Nation. They may even put the Greens ahead of One Nation. So I don't really think that, 59 is what they're going to get. But I mean, Jesus, if they get 50, if they get in the high 40s, that's still incredible. They're effectively, or they're not effectively, they are the opposition, right? And then they're 3 years away from being the government potentially. And we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 years. Anything could happen. Pauline Hanson could be Prime Minister. Barnaby Joyce could be Prime Minister, depending on what happens. But they don't seem to believe that. And so I think it's kind of beholden on everyone who supports them. I know we've got a lot of One Nation supporters in the chat and who watch the show. Like, this needs to be stressed to them really hard. Like, you're in the game. The game has come to you and you're in the lead. And you can't sit there shrinking violets going, look, it's all going to get rug pulled on us. No, you have to be confident. So, look, I mean, we can have a laugh about the Gaydon speech. The guy's incredible. Like, I mean, imagine finding a gay Indonesian boyfriend. Like, it's like the rarest Pokemon. I didn't even know they made those. I don't think I've ever seen one. And his backstory is hilarious. So he was a Labor guy, and then he ends up working on Christmas Island, where he gets red pilled and goes, hang on, maybe I'm not such a big fan of immigration anymore. But then he quits the Labor Party over their stance on immigration. Then he joins, the Sex Party. And then there's a gap in his resume and he somehow comes around to One Nation while picking up an Indonesian boyfriend and having a friend circle that looks like the cast of The Odyssey. It's got so much diversity. It's crazy, right? How they find this guy? I mean, are there that few candidates? And it was their safest. I mean, I think he might have gotten the highest margin out of all of them. It's crazy. Anyway, so that was the Gaydon speech. One of the things I think passed a lot of people by this week that I really want to talk about, just because he was such a big kind of fixture on this show when there was the debate about if he was the grand savior of the Liberals a while back. Hold on, let me just bring it up. I don't need a slide. I need to share my screen. This story, which was on the Nightly, and guys, you know me, I'm extremely critical of the mainstream media, but I don't hate the Nightly that much. I mean, they are very, they're kind of what News Corp was back in the early 2000s, and I think that's kind of where they're pitching themselves. They ran this story inside Andrew Hastie's campaign against Ben Roberts-Smith. This is fascinating stuff. This is really fascinating stuff. It goes inside the relationship between Andrew Hastie and Ben Roberts-Smith and how they had a falling out over the fact that Hastie didn't like doing bare knuckle push-ups. But it has had this hilarious line in it that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention, because I know some of you like to sledge Hastie online, but there's a great line in here about how they ended up falling out. He, where is it? Yeah. So Hastie failed SAS selection the first time round. About a third of the trainees failed the training and were sent back to the regular army. They almost included Mr. Hastie, who was unable to hit an A4 size target at 15 meters with a pistol while wearing a gas mask 4 weeks into a 12-week close quarter battle course. What a massive self-own to admit about yourself. 15 meters isn't that far. In a gas mask, you would think you'd be able to do that. I can't hit anything outside 15 meters, but I can shoot 15 meters drunk. That whole story is really worth a read. Go on to the Nightly. A journalist called Aaron Patrick wrote it. It's quite good. But it kind of contextualizes the whole thing as this kind of internal battle between Ben Roberts-Smith and Hastie, which is really unedifying and should make everyone kind of concerned about what's been going on, like the truth of what's really been going on with a lot of this stuff with BRS. Which, of course, loops back into the stuff we were talking about at the beginning about Paul Brereton appearing before estimates. He's patient zero for this whole thing, right? And now he's resigning. What's really going on with all that? We just don't know. No one knows. We'll get to some questions from the chat in a second. Jack Lancer says, I'm here to tell you that's not a high-level shooting. Now, I know Jack, and I know that he knows that stuff. Yeah, 15 meters, even in a gas mask. You can't hit. An A4 page is bigger than an X-ring. I haven't found a way to actually weave it in, but we did think of a funny joke in the SOC group chat earlier, which was because we're going to get to Malcolm Turnbull later. I don't know if anyone's seen in Malcolm Turnbull's book, he talks about how he used to piss the bed when he was at St Ives. It's super hilarious. He actually wrote this in a book, as I think Matt Clark is in the chat said earlier. You couldn't torture that out of me in Abu Ghraib, but Turnbull just admits it. So, yeah, we were saying, who can clear a room faster? Andrew Hastie in a gas mask with a 9mm or Malcolm Turnbull's bed sheets? Yeah. Matt Clark says, I'm getting no sound on YouTube. Is it just me? I don't know. It has occurred to me that I was playing licensed music earlier. I think that Beethoven's Ninth piece might have been licensed, so YouTube might have shut it down. Oh, well, watch on X. I don't really care about YouTube that much anyway. Oh, Siren Sidge Run has got it. Good. Must just be you. Brucey says, John, should I do a motion to get Ashby and Pauline to step down at my next One Nation branch meeting? Well, dude, if you want to still have a branch, I'd suggest maybe no. Maybe you don't want to do that. I don't know. No, I think is the short answer to that. It's interesting. I saw an actual clip from their constitution someone posted this week, and it had the line that you can't, as a branch member, you can't do anything that isn't in the best interests of Pauline Hanson, basically. So, yeah, I don't think that's going to work out very well for you. I don't think you should do that. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you break down what their polling data is, whilst those of us in the, right-wing brain cell community might find their mannerisms and manner of speaking off-putting, and the general lack of intellectualism in One Nation off-putting, at the end of the day, I would suggest at least 10% of the people voting for One Nation, and a fairly significant cohort of the people who have switched their vote to One Nation, they are voting for Pauline Hanson. So the short answer is no. I don't think anyone should be thinking about a post-Pauline movement just yet. I mean, we need to see what Pauline can do in 2028. Yeah. Afak, you just said, you see that poll without Pauline, One Nation vote drops 7%. Yeah. Like, she is the brand. That's what people are voting for. This goes to my point about the Gaydon speech, right? Like, I think for a huge number of voters, the fact that they are so off-putting to elites is the reason why they're voting for her. So, I mean, looking around, I mean, anyone you could put in at this point, it's just not going to work. It has to be her. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't see a way beyond that. Look, I mean, Lee Hanson, her daughter here in Tasmania, she's a spectacular candidate. I mean, she could lead the entire country, but I think that's a ways off. So yeah, guys, Pauline is the option. Hyperborean Chandala says, who needs intellectualism? We need victory, not a theory cell wankfest. Look, you're right at an electoral level, but the thing you got to remember is what happens when they win. We know what the lack of intellectualism did to the first term of the Trump government, right? Someone has to be thinking the big thoughts. And the clever thing that we've seen out of the UK, and what Brian and I tried to do when we started this, is, look, no one needs to fucking hire a bunch of us in the departments. You just need to have a clearinghouse for ideas. That's it, right? You don't need to write policy papers. You don't need think tanks. You just need to say the words out loud and hope someone hears them. That's what they do in the UK. That's where the kind of intellectual center of gravity is something like reform comes from. It's just got to say the ideas out loud. So you're right. We don't need a bunch of theory cells in politics. We just need super popular people that they like, that they're going to vote for, like they like Pauline Hanson right now. Sneed Redeem says, if they replace Pauline with Barnaby as leader, I wonder how the polling would change. I think it would be a problem for them outside of New South Wales. I think Barnaby is actually quite popular in New South Wales, but I think it'd be a problem elsewhere. Yeah. We need strong, retarded soldiers behind a tiny few smart people. Well, you literally do. It's a great, I'm trying to remember where I read it. It was a great academic paper, and it was dated to the end of the Vietnam War. It was by the Rand Corporation. And it was an analysis of comparative IQs of US GIs and Viet Cong, North Vietnamese Army soldiers and insurgents. And like the IQ gap between a GI who had to have graduated high school and the VC was something like 20 points. But what they found was that there was no IQ gap between VC command and US high command, because all those senior Vietnamese generals, all the guys pulling the strings, they'd been educated. I mean, in France, in Russia, in China. They'd gone to the best military academies. They're extremely smart guys, which proves the point, right? You don't need a bunch of smart people to win a war. You just need a few smart people running the war. That's all you need. And look, I'm increasingly confident that that's going to happen with One Nation. It doesn't take many smart people to run a campaign. And in the background, you can kind of see the pieces moving into place. So I'm very white-pilled this week. I'm in a very good mood. I don't know why. I just got a good feeling about things for once. Of course, the other big news this week, speaking of funny things, is Turnbull and the Teals, right? The Teals want to start a party. We've been saying they had a party this whole time, by the way, but now they want to formalize it. And they've called on none other than Malcolm Turnbull to help sort it out. Yet within, 48 hours of it happening, they've all turned around and half of them say they don't want to do it anymore. The word on the street, the gossip is they got money problems. They got big money problems, right? Climate 200 money is drying up. If you have anything to do with the renewable sector, I have kind of an arm's length a bit to do with the renewable sector. When you talk to these guys, the investors, their language in the last year, like in the last 12 months, has totally changed from where they were, right? The kind of zealous adherence to net zero, the belief in the battery storage solutions, it's all gone by the wayside, And the biggest thing that's changed has been AI. And so now a lot of these guys are sitting there going, well, we need the AI to help us solve climate change, and the AI needs energy, and the energy is going to be more important. So in this kind of environment where the investment matrix is changing, I just don't think the Teals are going to be able to come up with the money. So I think what they figured out is they need the party structure to be able to centralize their expenditure, increase their buying power, and be able to run a nationwide campaign, because, what they could do before with, the individual donations to individual community independents, they're just not going to be able to keep doing, because the actual money isn't going to be there. Devil We Want says Tanky is communist. I think Tanky's like old school university communist. That's how I always use it. I don't know if anyone else has got a definition of Tanky. We probably got some lurking in the chat if they want to jump in and tell us. But like when I was at uni, there was a difference between like a tanky and a trot. Like tankies tended to be older. They had like hammer and sickle pins, and trots tended to be just like generic leftists. So yeah, that was always the difference to me. Matt just pointed out the Pope doesn't need like that. I mean, the Pope thing's fascinating. You guys seen this? Like, I'm not very religious, so I don't take this stuff that seriously. But I read the encyclical that came out. Fascinating. I want to get Nathan Porter back on the show to see if he can revise his views on not baptizing AIs, because it seems like the Pope's having a serious think about this stuff at the moment. Actually, we've got James Ison saying both Tanky and Trot have lost all meaning. Now, I know him from Twitter. I believe he is one of those two. James, are you a Tanky or a Trot? It's a safe place. You can tell us. Scotty Thompson says, I don't know, my university was full of Asians. I don't think Chinese communist guys have that distinction. I think they're their own thing. Matt Square says data centers have blown the bottom out of the net zero boat for sure, all predicated on managed decline in energy. Well, you can't do the managed decline in energy anymore. It's impossible to do. And this is what I think everyone's figuring out. Like, I think they were hoping for this contraction, and it's just not going to come about. James says he's a post-trot, technically. James is actually an interesting guy. I follow him on Twitter. I'm always interested in leftists with smart and nuanced takes, and it's good to have you here, man. We are equal opportunity sociopaths at Stream of Consciousness. Scotty, now, for those of you who don't know, Scotty Tompkins and I actually met through mutual hatred or love of the Carlton Football Club. And so this is kind of a big deal for us, is that Carlton have come back from where they were. And I reckon it's Voss going. That's just my view. That's probably the most you'll ever hear me talk about sport on the stream in my life. Yeah, Tommy says we need a legend for all these abbreviations and terms. That's true, and because we've also kind of developed our own shorthand for things as well. We have all kinds of memes and stuff that we've come up with on our own. Maybe you're right. If one of the Sock Puppet Gold Pass members wants to do that, that could be a fun thing to throw up on Twitter. Matt Clark says he just got age locked out of Substack and he can't view my Substack unless I provide ID. Well, dude, I do talk about some pretty like grown-up things on there. I don't think I can fix that. Rowan says I'm the only Taswegian that isn't drinking Bogues. I don't like Bogues, man. I've never liked Bogues. I drink Cascades. I'm drinking Great Northern right now, and I'm about to switch to a Kieran. But I've never been one of those beer guys who like gets super into one brand of beer. I'm not I'm just not built that way. And plus, you drink enough of it, you can barely taste it. Yeah, Skull says lurk more and you'll figure it out. Well, this is true. I mean, we have said we want to remain as kind of opaque as possible, keep the tourists away. Yeah, maybe we do. Well, maybe we should just make it even more difficult if you guys want to come up with some more abbreviations. That's actually an interesting question. Is Substack affected by the social media ban? That's weird. It feels like it shouldn't be. I mean, kids might need it for research and stuff. Maybe they want to read mine and learn about the world. I don't know. Kurt, who's a fellow Tasmanian, is saying nothing wrong with Bogues Premium or St. George. Yeah, St. George is okay. I don't mind that one. Well, what else we got going on today? Farky says we do need a better quality. Just ones on Twitter are just sloganeers. I mean, well, this is one of the interesting pieces of news this week, right? Speaking of quality of leftists, the ABC, of course, have fled Twitter to go to where all the leftists went to, which is Blue Sky. And it's not working out very well for them. But like their posting has massively plummeted. Someone pointed out today that they're posting like 5 times an hour on Blue Sky. They're posting 5 times a day on X. Now you look at the number difference. I mean, look, X isn't a huge platform in Australia. I'm the first to admit that. Most of these viewers you've seen, these are from overseas, I suspect. But, it is kind of where political conversations happen globally. That's just the reality. If you want to be on the cutting edge of news, X is where you go. It is very interesting that the ABC have walked away from it. Now, some fellow Tasmanians, Brad Stansfield and Alex Johnston, who have a less well-viewed podcast down here in Tassie, they had Kim Williams on the other day. I mean to brag, but like I think I've already got more viewers on this stream than they got with Kim fucking Williams, but that's as an aside. Kim actually seemed to not know about the Blue Sky move and seemed really critical of it, but it hasn't stopped them from doing it. They're still pushing ahead with it. And look, I think it's kind of annoying because, look, I can't stand the ABC's TV coverage. I can't stand it. I find ABC 24 and ABC politically terrible. But ABC state news coverage is fantastic in every single state, and especially here in Tasmania. It was especially good in New South Wales. It's long been great. And I think it's really unfortunate that a lot of that content you can only get from the ABC, right, is just no longer going to be shared on X. And if you look at what is being shared on X that isn't paywalled, I mean, the SMH hardly, and the Fairfax Press barely bother. I mean, 2GB put their stuff up, but let's not get started on 2GB yet. We're going to get into the Noticer versus 2GB pogrom later, a.k.a. Ben Fraudham. A lot of this stuff you got to pay for. It's ABC or The Guardian. That's really it. I just saw a text from someone laughing at the my characterization of Brad and Alex's podcast. If you're watching, guys, that wasn't a sledge. It's just a fact. I'm sorry to admit it. it shocks me. It does shock me because they're really talented guys. Brad Stansfield's a really big party. And yet they just can't get the numbers on their podcast. The devil we want says, is stream quality terrible, or is it John's internet or mine? I suspect it's mine. I have very bad internet today. I'm streaming off my phone. So sorry. I like it. If it was up to me, I would make it worse. I would actually make the stream quality deliberately worse. I would have like VCR like lines across the screen. I might actually switch it to a faster one. But yeah, it's always been my dream to have a live stream like Sam Hyde's one, you know, like that kind of $1 million extreme aesthetic. Now, this may drop out for like 2 seconds as I press the button and flip Wi-Fi. So brace yourselves. You might have to entertain yourself for 2 seconds. Wait for it. Yeah. Yeah. Is it working? Yeah, it's working. There you go. There you go. Are you happy now? Matthew Clark says it's good that ABC went to Blue Sky. It means I have less influence. I don't know, man. Like I have a different view on the ABC to a lot of people. A much different view. I mean, like I don't like this idea that we're just going to get rid of the ABC. We're just going to ban it. Like get rid of it. Like it's not a good idea. The ABC for longer than it wasn't was a very conservative institution for decades. It was a conservative institution. It was the most balanced reporting. And honest to God, guys, you probably will never realize this unless you do the kind of work I do. But it is still one of the most balanced places for non-political news. Like, I work on all kinds of different public campaigns. I work on all kinds of different issues. And I find overwhelmingly the ABC is where you go when you want unbiased coverage. That's just a reality. Now, that does not apply to Canberra at all. And I restrict all my comments on the ABC to their very hardworking state gallery and regional bureau reporters who do a really great job. It's just those guys in Canberra that suck, and they're foreign guys as well. The ABC is an institution absolutely worth saving. It's not an institution that should be thrown away. It should not be competing with commercial media, is the long and short of it, right? Which is what it currently does. And if you go and watch the interview on Alex and Brad's podcast, which I'll link later, I'll give him a plug to all my followers. Kim Williams kind of makes this point, which is a really weird point, that, we got to be where the audience is. Well, that's not actually true. The ABC doesn't have to be where the audience is. The ABC doesn't have to be where the ideology is. The ABC just has to do the things that commercial networks will not do because they're not profitable. Now, the number one thing that is not profitable in our country is regional reporting, rural and regional reporting. You know, when I started my career as a press secretary, our media contact lists ran into hundreds of pages. There were hundreds of rural and regional newspapers and little radio stations and ABC bureaus, and these things were everywhere. There were so many rural and regional journalists, and over the decades, it's just declined into nothing. And it's declined because it's not profitable. You know, when Cumberland News shut down, when Fairfax Communities shut down, it was because it just wasn't making any money. That's where the ABC should step in. Now, but you know what happened over the last decade is ABC cut those services as well. Now, they maintain their presence for covering things like natural disasters and things like that, and they do a really good job. But you know what they have never cut? Laura Tingle's fucking budget, right? They don't cut Annabelle Crabb's dumb cooking shows. They don't cut Insiders, right? They don't stop sending that complete degenerate John Lyons to the United States to just embarrass our country in front of the United States government, right? They sent an Australian journalist to Cuba last week to interview Fidel Castro's daughter. They have, get this, the ABC has a reporter inside Tehran, reporting live, getting Iranian propaganda, right? They don't cut any of that shit, but they cut, the cadet journo walks out of Charles State University is scribbling notes at Mrs. Smiggin's cat show in Glargenbone, something that actually matters to people and that commercial networks won't do, right? So, yeah, the ABC needs massive reform, but it doesn't need to go. That would be pointless. It does need to go? SBS. SBS has got to go. There is no world in which SBS should exist anymore. Right? You cannot, if you're Angus Taylor or Pauline Hanson, how can you, in current year, commit to funding a broadcaster to provide news in the language of people that you say should all be speaking English? Why does that exist? Why does that still exist? Matt says SBS gets all the movies and international shows. Who cares, dude? Get them on Mubi. Get it fucking Netflix. Also, the only show I watch on SBS is SAS Rogue Heroes. You guys seen that? That show fucking rules. I don't know how the BBC managed to make that a show about the origin story of the SAS in the Second World War with just all white guys. It's incredible. But have you ever tried to watch shit on SBS iView and it's just in 720? It looks worse than my stream. And you're like, what is our budget going on if they can't even stream in 1080? Fuck those guys. Get rid of their SBS. That's an easy way to save money on the media budget. Steve Bennett says if you keep SBS, it should be for late night action movies with nudity only. Yeah, they stopped doing all that, man. When I was a kid, they used to have cool shit on SBS. SBS was where I saw Neon Genesis Evangelion for the first time in the late 1990s, right? Don't do that stuff anymore. Now it's just, Viceland, lame fucking activist journalism. Fuck it, get rid of it. An ABC reporter working from safe houses and dodging the IRGC running on coffee and 3 hours sleep would be monster. Dude, that's not what they were doing. It was on. If you want to watch it, if you want to subject yourself to it, I couldn't believe that they did it. It was on the news last night, the 7 o'clock news. And they were having their hands held. They were being shown to protests full of pro-regime people. They were interviewing members of the regime's government. I mean, the thing that frustrates me so much about SBS's foreign coverage is that they do not want us to win the war. They don't want to defeat Iran. Imagine if that attitude had prevailed during the war on terror. Imagine if the ABC had been in Kabul interviewing Taliban leaders while they were shooting at our own guys. Right? It's a disgrace that they're allowed to get away with it. And it's the national broadcaster that should have to broadcast in the national interest. And it is not in Australia's interest for the United States to lose the war in Iran. So, yeah, watch that if you want to make yourself angry. While Colonial Girl says, let's admit that the ABC has been partaking in decades of mind control on the public, slowly swaying the agenda. Look, I don't know. I don't know if it's decades. I mean, this stuff really only started happening. My lighting just went weird. I should adjust in a second. This stuff only started happening in the last decade, I think. It wasn't always like this, We used to do an interesting thing during campaigns. It fell out of favor as watching TV fell out of favor. But what you used to do is every night on the news during an election campaign cycle, you would rate the newses, win, lose, draw for your side. And I think between 2007 and 2019, I collected all the bits, and we used to get a bit of paper and put them up in the campaign office about who was winning the news each night. And I used to collect them all, and I did a spreadsheet with them eventually and said over the last decade who won and lost the news and which stations did we win and lose the most on. Now, it should surprise no one that the Liberals always lost on Channel 10, right? But interestingly, the one we drew the most on was always the ABC, just because week on week, the ABC was generally the most balanced coverage. But that was a long time ago. I think if you repeated that now at a federal level, you're certainly not seeing that. Look, they're good at the state level, but whoever is running their federal news bureau has a lot to answer for. And look, I think they haven't swayed the agenda, as evidenced by the fact that One Nation is sitting on 30%. If anything, I think the ABC's overt partisanship at a federal level has actually contributed to the volatility, has contributed to the breakdown in social cohesion that makes something like One Nation even happen. So well done, guys. You did not get what you want. What else we got, guys? Yeah, Bully Bullput says Friendly Geordie says ABC is still liberal propaganda. Well, I mean, I think that's how you probably know that they're on the right track a lot of the time, right? Because they do get sledged by that side as much as anyone else. My problem isn't the actual party partisanship. My point is that they have adopted an ideological stance that's neither liberal nor Labor, really. It's closer to where the nexus between the Teals and the Greens are, if anything. I mean, look at fucking when we did the budget live stream, Patricia Kervazelis or Patricia Vuvuzela, saying what a disgrace it was that people were voting One Nation and how it shouldn't be normalized. James Tyson says Friendly Geordies thinks normal people watch Sky News in 2026. It's something I'm ashamed to admit, guys. I'm not ashamed to admit, but probably might be surprising, is I don't think I've watched a single Friendly Geordie's videos since he did that one with but since he was doing the John Barilaro stuff. I just don't watch it. I find his voice so annoying. Like, just so annoying. Just his manner of speaking. Like, I don't know. He just never seems serious to me. Like, bizarre. Very bizarre. Green Goblin says, speak about PK versus Sam Bamford, say my name. Hey, what's been going on? I mean, you guys got to help me with this because I've been following that closely, but I've seen there's been a lot of internal, scene drama this week. Sam Bamford, Joanna Howe, a little bit of Drew, Rukshan, Avi, the Nazis. Everyone's at each other's throats about what is an Australian. Trying to do this purity spiral and making sure everyone's white enough to campaign against immigration. Look, I hate Rukshan and Avi for a whole heap of reasons unrelated to their race. Same reasons I hate Topher Field, and he's a white guy. I think maybe that kind of stuff is exactly what our opponents want us to do at this point. I don't know. I don't think it's very smart to attack people. I mean, Joanna Howe, if you close your eyes, if you didn't know what she looked like, what does she sound like? She doesn't sound foreign. No person has done more to advance the cause of the pro-life movement in Australia in a generation. She's done more. And look, putting aside my view that I think it's all redundant and she shouldn't bother, but she does bother, and yet she has done more in the last 12 months in pro-life politics than fucking Lyle Shelton did in 10 years. So, I don't think we need to be attacking people over their origin story. And look, there are some people that we can secretly think aren't Australian, but it just shouldn't matter at this point. There's an interesting quote. I don't mean to sound like Ross Cameron, but I was reading a thing, and I think actually maybe I saw it on Ross's timeline. A line from it was from Aristotle. This idea of the Greek word is philia, not like a philia, but like a philia, and it means like the kind of intangible cohesion of a city-state. And Aristotle makes the case that it can only happen in a homogenized ethnic society, in a society that is ethnically homogenous. So it can't happen in a diverse society. But the interesting thing about that is when it's working, you aren't really able to identify it at all. So the fact that we can even have this debate goes to show that something's gone wrong. Look, there were people with a myriad of skin colors living in Athens in 1,000 years ago, but there weren't many, and they kind of get subsumed into the homogenized whole to the point where no one notices. If you don't form enclaves, if everyone speaks the same language, if everyone sounds the same, and everyone has the same values, then it doesn't matter. Then it really doesn't matter how suave you are, And I think that's what we got to get back to. I mean, look, someone said, Steve Bennett said, I actually do mind having my ethnicity denied. Look, I mean, and that's a crucial part of the entire political movement we're in, right? It's the fact that our ethnicity is denied every single day. But I don't think it serves any valid purpose to turn that on to other people. Defend our own ethnicity, defend our own culture and values. But if someone with a different ethnicity wants to advocate for them, good, let them. And it doesn't matter that they don't look like us. This is my objection to Rukshan, is he doesn't have Western values at all. You can see it when he talks. Avi Yemeni does not have Western values because there isn't anything Western about Israel at all, right? And advocacy for Israel is not Western, right? They are an Eastern vassal of the United States and should be treated as such. I respect Israel's right to exist, but let's not pretend that they're like us. Israel is Palestine with gay bars at the end of the day. And if you take the funny hats and the candles away, they have the same violent souls as their neighbors do. This idea that they're somehow Western cousins removed, it's fucking bullshit, right? And they cosplay as Westerners in our own countries and try to trick us. So I don't think either of those guys are on board with the same project that we are. But yeah, look, there's no sense making people put folks with different skin colors in different boxes. I just don't agree with it. Governor Jay Fox, just Israel is Palestine with gay bars. Dude, I honestly believe this, right? I've said it on the show before, and I know it upsets some of the fucking pro-Israel guys that follow me, but you go back in history, there's no ethnic difference between a Jew and a Palestinian, not really. Dive into their DNA. You go back far enough, pre-Islam, they're all the same people, and they were still fighting each other, So yeah, I don't have much time for that stuff. Rob Dobalina says they're the most vile. He said the word. He said vile. You got to say it in Christopher Pine's voice, dude. Yeah. How can you advocate for our own Australian ethnicity but not deny that everyone else is Australian? I don't think I denied that everyone else is Australian. I mean, there is a distinct Australian ethnicity at this point, right? I personally don't put the word Australian in it. I always just use the term like Anglo-Celtic. Like, I consider that there's an Australian culture. I don't consider that there is an Australian ethnicity at all, right? In the same way that, our ethnicity is the British ethnicity, right? So it just seems to me to be kind of redundant to throw the word Australian in the front of it. Like, it's Anglo-Celtic heritage. It's Anglo-Saxon Celtic, if you want to get specific, depending on what eye color you have, maybe. I don't know. And, people are going to have elements of it that aren't entirely Anglo-Celtic. I mean, I'm half Greek, but I don't speak it. I never spent a day in Greek school. I don't identify as Greek. I have beautiful hair that I'm never going to lose, and that's probably my Mediterranean genes. But in my outlook, in my culture, in my physiognomy, I'm in every way same as my Anglo-Celtic forebears on my father's side. Skull says Australian is a British ethnicity. Look, I just don't think that's true, right? I just don't think Australia has an ethnicity. Britain has an ethnicity. We were a British colony, but after an okay 150 or so years, stood on our own 2 feet, its inhabitants are British. In the same way that Canada doesn't have an ethnicity. There's no such thing as an ethnic Canadian. Canadians identify as Northern American. That's Northern American Caucasians. And Canada, up until very recently, it was very much like Australia, and it had a cultural affinity with England, but less so now. So yeah, I do kind of reject this idea of a genetic Australian lineage, and I think it's kind of a bad idea to do it too, because you don't want to start DNA testing every white Australian, because you're going to have to drop the Anglo off that Anglo-Celtic very quickly if you do that. Yeah, I just think the idea of Australian ethnicity is entirely redundant. We are our heritage is British. Our heritage is Anglo-Celtic. That's where we come from. Yeah, I mean, someone said Ozpil says something else. Look, I mean, maybe in another 100 years, man. I really just think 200 years, you're not going to develop a distinct genetic lineage different to our forebears. We don't have that, right? We're white British guys with a different accent, right? Our culture is very specific and unique and absolutely under threat. But man, genetically, we're not an ethnicity. We're exiled British, alone on the far end of the world, heirs to an empire that no longer wants us. Yeah. There are 8 billion undocumented Australians in the world. Yeah. I've broken Rancid Piss in my ass's heart, which really affects me. Maybe Rancid Piss in my ass needs to come on next week and debate me. I don't even think it's worthy of debate, really. Like, if you want to fucking show us your 23andMe test. And did you guys see that the CIA have been going through 23andMe tests to find who's aliens? The Daily Mail reported this week. John, I know you're aware there is a quality human capital issue on the right, so why aren't you Chad Maxing to make sure you're around long term? We need you. Start pumping iron and hidden cardio. No, dude. I'm on the Jonathan Bowden fringe of the right, dude. I have a terrible diet, and actually, I don't have a terrible diet. I just eat too much butter and rich food, and drink too much wine, and drink too much generally. I'm not gonna do that. I am taking the peptides though, not the Monjaro, not like the full thing. I just got the GLP-1 in the little capsule, and I've already lost like 3 kilos. It's fucked. I haven't made any changes in my life at all. Actually, that's not true. I started smoking again because there's a massive vape shortage. So I saved. This is my last vape. This may well be the last vape in Hobart, and it's on 8%. So I saved it for this stream specifically. Yeah, guys, give me your peptide recommendations in the chat, because I've got a great guy for them, and I'm super into them. I couldn't believe it after just 1 week on these capsules, like that you just like lose weight. It's stupid. I've always struggled to lose weight. I don't generally care about it, but I thought it'd be fun. What do we got here? We got Nationalist Revival says, I sent this question a few minutes ago, but I think it's been crowded with other comments. But do you have any thoughts on the White Australia case being accepted by the High Court of Australia? Yeah, I'm really happy for him. I thought, I don't know, the decision's up online. I think the decision went up online after our show last week where I talked about it. They accepted to hear it, but their interlocutory, or however you say it, application around their the suspension of the hate speech laws pending the outcome wasn't accepted. I mean, that was entirely predictable. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to affect them that much. I mean, if depending on the outcome of this trial, they'll still just be able to create the party as well. They should have. I was kind of optimistic about it, and then I did a bit more research. I think I talked about it a bit on last week's stream, but if you, the history of this is really interesting, because the reason why we suspect that they could win is because of and I think it was a 2012 or 2013 High Court decision in a case called New South Wales Government versus Unions New South Wales. In 2011, Barry O'Farrell passed a law seeking to limit the ability of the union movement to run third-party campaigns on the grounds that, and Liberals have believed this for many years, and to an extent it's true, that the union's ability to each individual union run these third-party campaigns and thus go over the caps, the funding caps, benefited the ALP at the expense of everyone else. So he moved to ban it. The unions then appealed it in the High Court, and the High Court upheld their challenge and said that every Australian, regardless of what organisation they're in or who they are, has an implied constitutional right to political communication. They found this on the grounds that of the 5 actual rights that we have in the Constitution, one, of course, is the right to vote. And flowing on from the right to vote is we have a right to run, so long as you meet the other constitutional thresholds, Section 44, etc. And if you have the right to run, you have the right to campaign. And if you have the right to campaign, you have the right to spend money. And so from that, we have this implied right to political communication. Since then, in 2 other pieces of legislation, the implied right to political communication has actually been enshrined in statute as well. So the White Australia Party have that going for them. On top of that, they have the 1951 referendum. Someone incorrectly in the chat said it was Lehrman said 1956 Communist Party case. It was actually 1951, which I said on last week's stream. The funny thing about that is we voted against banning the Communist Party at a time when Australia was at war with communism. 1951, we had 18,000 Australian soldiers in Korea. On the day of the referendum, there were 9,000 soldiers in Korea, and 2,500 of them voted to keep the Communist Party. So yeah, they've got that going for them as well, right? So there is an implied right of freedom of political communication. There is a referendum saying that, well, you need a referendum to ban a political party. And so what this government is doing is this kind of sneaky backdoor attempt to ban a political party. Now, it looks like, we have no reason to disbelieve them, but it looks like Tony Burke's announcement that neo-Nazis in general were being rendered a hate organisation came within 24 hours of them registering with the Electoral Commission with, I believe, 1,700 signatures. So the whole thing's pretty sneaky. Now, the question is going to be, what is this High Court like? And, you know, are they going to let it go through? The concern is that 2 years after Unions New South Wales versus New South Wales Government, there was a subsequent case called Jeff McCloy v New South Wales Government. In the wake of the decision on implied freedom of political communication, there was a guy who was a corrupt property developer. I think I can say he was corrupt without getting defoed. Alleged corrupt property developer called Jeff McCloy, who went through an ICAC investigation, and a part of that ICAC investigation covered the fact that property developer donations were banned in the state of New South Wales, and McCloy had conspired or allegedly conspired to provide them. So McCloy then took the New South Wales government to the High Court and said that the ban on property developer donations was unconstitutional. But in that case, the High Court actually found that there was an overriding public interest in property developers not being able to donate. So you've got these two kind of decisions in conflict. You've got the implied freedom of political communication that everyone should have when it's unions, and then you've got the public interest against it when it's property developers. So that inconsistency leads me to be concerned that in this matter, the High Court may turn around and say, yes, you have an implied right for freedom of political communication. Yes, everyone should be allowed to start a political party and run, but there is an overriding public interest in not having a white Australia party. That's going to be fucked if they do that, right? Because what that's essentially going to do is say that some policies, advocating for certain policies, is off the table in Australia, right? And I've said it before, and I don't agree with everything they do and say, but I've always had a lot of respect for Thomas for this much. Is he's always coached the White Australia Party in the context of the White Australia policy, which is an actual policy, and that's the policy that he advocates for. So losing this is going to send a message that if you don't have politically correct policies, you can run afoul of the law. And that should be very concerning for One Nation. That should be even concerning for the Liberals. It should be concerning for the Nationals. It should be concerning for anyone who wants to do any major policy change in this country, because it's going to seem like the government of the day gets to decide what are approved policies or not before you get to propose them. So yeah, dude, that's what I think about that. Yeah. What else we got? Who votes based on race? Aristocrat Tecum has invoked Professor Emeritus Anne Twomey. She is quite smart. I might watch that, actually. Thanks for that. There goes my idea for the biofuel and no potholes parties. Yeah, I mean, this seems to be the problem. I mean, did you notice in that the Senate estimates, or not Senate estimates, it was in the anti-Semitism Royal Commission when they got Mike Burgess from ASIO up, and he had a massive cry that he didn't have enough money to do counterterrorism. Like, well, maybe you shouldn't have been going after guys for belt buckles and signs that said abolish the Jewish lobby. Like, maybe they should have done something else with their time. Matthew Clark says, "Why we can't just have all these political parties that are ethnic blocs." I mean, that's very likely what's going to happen, although the most likely scenario right now is that Labor's simply going to grab all of them. You know, I really don't see, I don't really see any hope of the Liberals carving any of them off. I mean, Pauline Hanson thinks she can get, they have this fascination with the idea that like Indians are a natural conservative constituency, and every conservative party around the world has gone through this stage. It's never going to come up. Bully Bullshit says the only White Australia party is the Teals. Yeah, exactly. Right. That's kind of weird, isn't it? How white the Teals are. Oh wow, we got a special guest in the chat. We got Chris Minns, Spooky Ghost. That's some ancient New South Wales political law. Welcome, Spooky Ghost. Do you have any gossip about Chris Minns and his various corruptions? Any Stuart Ayres yarns, maybe? I know who those guys are. In fact, I think I used to have that Twitter account at one point. We used to have fun with that. If you're an Asian American and happen to be elected vice president, would you want to be called the rice president? See, this is the kind of stuff that we need more of in the chat, guys. We've got to be less serious. We don't want people to think that we're a bunch of nerds. Steve Bennett makes a really good point. If they remove the political path, it could lead to worse things. Yeah, and look, man, I've been saying this for a year now, right? You go back to 1976. Forget about that. They didn't call it the White Australia Party. They called it the National Socialist Party of Australia, and it ran in 2 elections. And no one cared. No one cared. I think they got 1.6 and 1.9% of the vote across 2 elections. And no one gave a damn. No one was protesting in the streets about it. No one lost any sleep about it. It was just people shrugged and went, oh, well, there's Nazis, there's communists. It's part of the, beautiful patina of life, right? And they get 1 or 2%. I think the communists actually got less than the Nazis in 76. Probably because they could all just vote for Whitlam. That is the correct response to radicalism, by the way. The correct response is just to shrug and say, fuck it, who cares, right? How popular is it really? Conquer the World says we need a stream where you go through your political scalps claimed when you were working at the Liberal Dirt Unit. I can't even remember most of them. Most of them guys you wouldn't even have heard of. They were so boring. We usually got people before they became MPs, and like now I can't even remember half of them. Mandarin says invite Greg Barnes SC onto the pod. I actually saw him randomly in the street the other day. He's a really interesting guy. I do find him quite interesting. I don't think he'd do it though. I mean, he kind of got blue drip brained towards the end. Yeah, Joseph S makes a really good point. When was the last time an Australian government had the foresight to think of even second order effects, let alone third and fourth order, that could result in a really bad situation for everyone down the line? Never, dude. Well, actually, probably before the 1970s. That's probably the last time they really thought about it. Since then, electoral concerns have become paramount, and these guys just don't think of it at all. One of the most frustrating things isn't just the refusal to think about second order effects, but just to even have some insight into what the future might look like. You know, one of the stupidest things the government ever did in Australian political history was New South Wales government when they did that the lockout laws. Remember when they just shut down drinking in the city after midnight because one kid got punched in the head? Now, the reason that was happening, the reason why King's Cross was so violent at the time, was because no one could get home because everyone had to get taxis. This is in the early 2000s, right? It would get to midnight, 1 a.m, there'd be a taxi shift change. Everyone's just standing around the street. There's no public transport, by the way. There's no buses. The buses have stopped running. The trains stopped running. And so everyone is standing on the street waiting for a taxi to take them home. People's, nerves get frayed. Next thing you know, some private schoolboy gets his lights run. This was happening every weekend. So the government comes in and says, the only solution is we're just going to shut the whole thing down. Shut the entire city down at night. Do you know what happened? And it was literally 6 months. Do you know what happened 6 months later? Uber launched. And the whole question of taxi shift changeover, the whole question of public transport, it was all rendered redundant by an app. Now, that already existed when they were having that debate, and not a single politician took a step back and said, hey, wait a minute, if we just wait, all our problems are going to get solved for us. I am very concerned when we talk about second order effects. I mean, this is the thing I'm most concerned about with migration. I mean, putting aside the cultural issues, putting aside violent crime, fraud, all the bullshit that comes along with it, the damage it's doing to our economy and to the matrix of our GDP. We are now going through this period of tremendous upheaval because of artificial intelligence. And these guys are just completely forgetting about it. They're bringing in all these people to do jobs that won't exist soon. And no one has stopped while they are just plowing consumers into the market and plowing consumers of government services into the market and then increasing the funding for the government services to artificially inflate the GDP. No one has stopped and asked themselves, what happens when the jobs don't exist? Right? Now, some of them the government can keep a lid on. Driverless cars already exist. You got Waymos driving around Silicon Valley. They're going to get rolled out across the United States in short order. We're going to start seeing them in developed economies. You're going to start seeing them in Singapore. You're going to start seeing them in Tokyo. And like I keep banging the drum on, every country that has an energy surplus is going to jump on these things. Here in Australia, we know what they're going to do. They're going to campaign against driverless cars. Right? Anthony Albanese is going to come out. He's going to say, we're worried about them. We can't regulate them. We're not going to be able to have them. Why? Because that's the first chink in the armor of infinity migration. If they don't have Uber as a backup job, what are they going to do? It's the same reason why CASA prohibits consumer drones in metropolitan airspace. Everywhere across the United States has now got these things. They're dropping off groceries. They're dropping off Amazon orders, not here in Australia, right? They know the problem. You're going to have this double whammy in Australia in the coming years because Australia, with its energy deficit, with its economy that is friendly to zero-skill migrants, is going to keep having these people come in. But anyone who can afford to is going to seek a better quality of life elsewhere, right? When you look at the energy requirements for something like a G1 Unitree robot or the new robots that are coming off the production lines in the United States, they're not going to be viable here in Australia, not for potentially decades. Right? The amount of surface area you're going to need for solar, the amount of extra power it's going to cost. That's if you can even get the things regulated here. I mean, I've heard stories so far from talking to people in the robotics industry. They're concerned that the Australian government wants to regulate these things like cars. They want to slap regos on them for when they walk around the street collecting your groceries and stuff. It'll be another thing that the government will be hostile towards. News Corporation will be out there, alarmism about people with their fucking robots, right? And so if you have money, if you're technologically inclined, you're probably going to leave the country and go to somewhere where you can have the robot do your housework, look after the kids, where you can get the driverless car to and from work that earns you passive income, where you're going to be able to have enough energy to run the productivity stack at home that makes you more money. And of course, now we've got the problem of capital gains tax and investment taxes generally. So, so then you're going to have this situation in Australia where low-skilled labour is coming in, high-skilled labour is going out chasing a high quality of living. What kind of country are we going to have then? Right? Yeah. Breadmaker just said if all the robots are white, there'll be literally nothing to worry about. Did you see? I can't remember what they call the robot. I think it's the Neo. It's the American one that has like the soft coverings. And when it's about 40 grand, and when they put it online, the white one sold out first, and then the beige one sold out. And so for ages, the only robot you could get was the black one. I don't know if you guys have actually seen this stuff. I mean, the Chinese are really super cautious about the videos. Do you ever notice when you watch the Chinese propaganda videos of the Unitree robots, they always have them dancing with kids? And that's so you don't realize how small they are. But those things are actually tiny. Like they are barely 4 and a bit feet. Because they got to keep the size down. They got to keep the weight down. So, and they kind of don't want you to know that, just how small they are. But yeah, the Neon one is actually quite small as well, but it can lift like 75 kilos. Yeah, that's the future, guys. Robots are the future. The Australian government is going to hate them. I can't wait for it because I think it's going to be one of the funniest things I've ever done. Like, when you look at how the antipathy they already have towards the tech sector, the antipathy they have towards AI, like when you have robots running around, they're just going to lose their fucking minds, man. They're absolutely going to lose it. Yeah. Scotty Tompkins says the smaller robots are the more likely you will want to kick them, unfortunately. I think they're doing it deliberately so they're not very intimidating, but I think it is also because of the energy issues. I mean, even the best one you could get right now for about 60 grand, I mean, it's got a battery life of about 4 hours. But I'm like the Japanese on this, right? Like, I'm massively pro-automation. We need the robots. When Labor says, who's going to wipe the asses, we got to throw back in their face, robots. We're doing the robots, guys. I want to build them here. Everyone says like, oh, we need the Holden factories, the Ford factories. No, I want the robot factory. We should be building the Aussie bot, the Matilda. What can we call it? Ideas in the chat, please. What should we call the Australian robot? It could be like the Hills Hoist, right? Canavan needs to get onto this. He needs to get into robotics. Yeah. The Shazza-bot, Ozbot, Wallabot. Joseph S. makes this point. Isn't Japan investing heavily in robots for elderly care due to their aging population? They absolutely are, dude. It is still quite expensive, though. I've looked at some early studies on it. I've seen some of the early reports. You need 2 of them to lift people up, unfortunately, because right now they just can't lift people. Farku says Macabot, the Pauline Ransom, Aussie robot will need a CFMEU sticker. Yeah, maybe they will. I mean, I think the CFMEU will get behind it. The Irwin boss. Yeah, dude, we got to do this. Come on. Ozzo, the Sheila. Skull says Bruce. We could call it Bruce. Yeah, I think we're going to call it the Matilda. I don't know. I mean, maybe they'll get angry that the robot's got a gender. Rara says we could call it the Abbey after our dear Femosphere leader, Mrs. Chatfield. Yeah. The Nambot. Yeah, that could work. Is there an indigenous word for robot? You find something? Matilda makes me think of soy women's soccer. So Walmart Golem has finally joined the chat. He's late tonight. He wants to call it Tracy Lords. Thank you, so Walmart Golem. Kangabot could work. The Rouseabout, that could work. I mean, we could use these things on farms. The Cyber Yowie. You guys got to go back to the drawing board on this stuff. This is a bad focus group. I don't know. Look, give it a fucking number or something. But this is what Australia needs to do. We need to build out our robotics capabilities. They're not hard to build either. When you look at them, you look at the specs on them, and they're weirdly cheap for what they are. Those G1 uni trees are $18,000 right now. I think that's in US dollars. Conquer the World says, how about just call the robot mate? Perfect. Cobber. We just call it Cobber. Yeah. We could do all kinds of things with robots, right? Robot AFL. Probably play better than Carlton. Yeah, I'm very excited about the opportunities of robotics. No one else seems to be. No one else really seems to think about this stuff. But, I think we're going to get to a point where this stuff's incredibly important. It's not going to be long. It feels like one of those things that, when it starts moving, it's really going to move. Like, if you think back to, 2003, remember when the very first Stable Diffusion AI models came out and they took 15 minutes to generate a picture and it looked like something out of The Conjuring? Remember that? And you kind of squint at it and go, oh, does that look like what I told it to make? How quickly we went from that to now you can just make whole movies with it that look indistinguishable from real life. And it took a few years, right? So if you look at the kind of janky clanker packing and unpacking a dishwasher right now, and think about what that's going to look like in 3 years, no one's ready for this stuff, man, and especially not the Australian government, because their plan is fixed, and this is what should be so concerning to everyone. They already have their idea of what the country is going to look like. I mean, they gave us a preview in the budget. We know what they're trying to do. And unfortunately, they might not have a choice in it. Right? Breadmaker says Dexter after Perfect Match's Dexter computer match. I mean, that's getting pretty niche into Australian history. Maybe the Burjo. Maybe John Burgess is probably the most beloved Australian media figure. Yeah, guys, I'm pro robots. Speaking of things I'm not pro, and in the last in our litany of dumb news for the week, ISIS brides are back. Remember them? That was like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. We had ISIS brides. Now they're back again. They found more. They found more ISIS brides. We thought we got them all, but there was some left. Thankfully, we have Labor Party donors just out there looking for more ISIS brides. They found some. They're bringing them back. They're not bringing one back. I saw today. I saw that. I can't remember the name of the guy, but he's the deputy foreign minister. He was on the news today. He was making a big deal out of the fact that they found one. One of the ISIS brides got a negative security fine. Now, this guy, I can't remember his name. If anyone remembers the name of the deputy foreign affairs, the assistant foreign affairs minister, he looked like a nerd. That's why I can't remember him. He really let the cat out of the bag on Sky today. He's getting interviewed by one of the Sky dudes, might have even been Clennell. And no, it's not Julian Hill. No, it was the other one. Looked weirder. And he made this point, well, like, you got rid of one. Why do we have to have any of them? And he said, under Australian law, if there's no negative security finding, we have no reason not to take them. I mean, this coming off the back of Burgess sitting in the Anti-Semitism Royal Commission and saying, well, we don't have enough money to do anything. So could it not be the case that we don't know what the ISIS brides are capable of? Because they don't have any money. They were too busy not tracking the Akrams through the Philippines. And it turns out Uzbekistan, thanks Shari Markson for enlightening the country on that. We didn't know that. Wattle Crown says they are just as Australian as Steve Irwin. It's crazy, man. They're just letting more of them in. Yeah, we were trying to figure out what to call what the collective noun for ISIS brides is, and I think we ended up with a explosion of ISIS brides is the collective noun. They should not be in our country. They should have been left behind. Like every smart Western country whose ISIS brides went missing or simply had their residency and their passports cancelled, as should be stuck in the camps. The guys on Sky seem to have this theory that, and I haven't read much on this, I don't know if I believe it, that this is somehow something to do with the Americans, and the Americans have cut a deal with an incoming Syrian government to close all these camps since they want to empty them. That's just like bullshit. It's a Syrian government. If they want to empty the camps, like some unexploded munition would just go off in the camp. Like, I don't think they're sitting there wanting to do the right thing. The whole thing's insane. And now they're back. And so now we've sent a clear message to the young women of Western Sydney that you can just go and join a terrorist insurgency and then come back when the going gets tough, or you want to buy more vapes or something. Not that you can buy more vapes right now. We've got a vape shortage. Now, guys, it is 9:25. Normally, I would keep this going till 10, but no Brian. None of you volunteered to come on with me. I've done 90 minutes full tilt. You got to admit that's pretty impressive. So we're going to do one last cross to the chat, see if you guys got anything else you want to talk about, and then I'm going to go and nice work, Big Dog. Thank you, Bruce. John, have you tried Zyn? I got the Velos at the moment. Yeah, I do. I'm not good at them though. Like, I don't know. I think I got to like work in a callus in my lip where they can sit because I find them really uncomfortable. I just want to vape. Like, is that too much to fucking ask Australian government? I just want to vape. Fat Retard says, John, what's the law on your phone's getting confiscated? Yeah, so back in 2024, the NAC actually raided my house. Well, it wasn't actually my house. It was my girlfriend's house, which was complicating. You imagine how complicating a relationship drama that is? Like, sorry, baby, there's 30 national anti-corruption, ANU grad dysgenic nerds at my front door, and they want to search through your underwear drawer. Yeah, that sucked. They took my phone. They accused me of stealing submarine secrets, which I don't know how I would have done. Like, I'd be way richer if I had done that. Anyway, like, long story short, I didn't do it. It was a bit of malarkey that was illegally recorded, in fact, and then given to the NAC by a journalist. Look, the whole thing went nowhere, but they never gave my phone back. I was really pissed about it. I mean, look, I've got a new phone since. I don't need that specific phone back. But yeah, I'm still pissed about that. Now Brereton's gone. There are bits of it I can't talk about because they forgot to put a suppression order on it on the day they raided my house, which was hilarious. And of course, then the NAC immediately leaked it. They leaked it to the Australian Financial Review within like hours of it happening. But they did later put a suppression order on it. So I can't talk about anything. I can't talk about everything, but I can talk about the day of the raid. which we may do a stream on at some point in the future. We'll see what happens with Brer, and he's got to stick around until June. Fuck, he says, do the missus get salty? Actually, not as salty as you'd think. She actually handled it like a trooper, but we broke up for other reasons much later. Call it the Nakba. Yeah. So yeah, that was the thing that happened. And that's why I keep trolling him about where's my fucking phone. James Murray says, explain who Lienko Bancic is for the group. Now, if you want to know more about our Lord and Savior, Lienko Bancic, I actually did a podcast on this with John Lawson, the excellent member of the scene who runs the National Observer podcast. Go on YouTube, type in John McGowan, Lienko Bancic. You can watch it. If you think the production values on this stream are bad, you wait and see how I used to stream off a very shitty telephone camera glued to a wall. I think I only could do it for like 50 minutes at a time because the battery used to go flat. Green Goblin says we're going to need a new Oz Right Lost Property section, John's phone and Drew's wallet. You know, they're both probably in the same safe at the NAC. I can see I'm getting trolled for not being good at Zim. And it's hard. Maybe I have a small mouth. Maybe I got a tiny, pretty mouth or something. I don't know. Waddle Crown says, do you get any compensation from them stealing your phone or the undue harassment? Look, I mean, let's be real. It wasn't undue harassment, right? Like, I mean, I am a cunt. I wasn't salty about that. I was just salty about the whole, like, the fact it never went anywhere. It was all made up bullshit. To this day, I don't believe that was the reason they were raiding my house. I think they wanted other stuff. Yeah, long story. Anyway, we will find out soon. I think a lot of this stuff's going to come out through all the various processes around Brer and leaving. I'm looking forward to that. And look, nothing came of it. Nothing bad happened to me. Like, they didn't fucking arrest me or anything. Like, I mean, I think they knew it wasn't true. Conquer the World says, when's your next guest podcast? The one with Lawson was awesome. I don't know. We've been knocking around some ideas for who to have on. I want to get someone like, I want to get a big name on. We get like a politician or someone who watches the show. I really enjoyed having John Ruddock on. He's someone I enjoy talking to. I don't know. We're going to have to think about that. We've had Latham on before. Steve Bennett says, is Hobart a good place to live? Dude, Hobart's the best place to live in the country, hands down. It's my favorite place to live. I think there's really exciting business opportunities here. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. It's cheap. The weather's great if you're like me and you're fat. The food is spectacular. Come down. I got friends coming down this weekend who only know me from reading like my fucking tweets. So, you know, any of you guys want to come down to Tassie, I'll show you around. Actually, Green Goblin says Taylor Martin. I want to know how he feels post-Lib life. I mean, Taylor Martin's a fantastic guy, really amazing politician. We can have him on whenever we want. We might get onto that. Taryn Angove says, get Two Worlds Collide on. I heard, because someone asked me if I wanted to go on his show, and I heard that you have to go to him in Adelaide. He like only records in Adelaide. He doesn't go anywhere. So I don't know. I think everyone like does their own kind of thing. We all kind of have our own niches. I don't think I've watched some, like I've warmed up to him recently. Because, you know, I used to think the whole like buy me a coffee thing was a bit sad and cringe, but I do like the stuff he does now. But it's a lot different to this, right, guys? Like, you know, it's all very like talking to the camera, like, it's not for me. Like, I don't talk like that in real life. This is how I talk in real life. But so yeah, I don't think it would be a lot of those guys would be a very good fit. Bully Bullpit's got an exam tomorrow. Everyone wish him luck. Good luck, Bully Bullpit. What else we got? Conquer the World says, when's my next appearance on Leftoid Spaces? I don't know, man. Maybe tonight if I keep drinking. Because that's the secret. I got to be super drunk when I do it. Problem is, like, I don't know if you guys have noticed if you follow these guys, but they're getting really scared and mean. Like, they're not funny anymore. I used to just like you say, like, it's funny. Like, I used to do it because it's funny, but increasingly they're not funny. So yeah, I don't know if I will jump on. And like Sid Viscus, that guy who organizes them, like, he's fun. But the other guy that does it, I think, Yeah, I think he's mean and weird. All right, guys, that's it. I'm done. I will see you all back on the toots. We will see you back here next Tuesday, unless anything super exciting happens. And I've also realized that I can run a. Wait 1 second. I can actually play an exit video, so I don't have to just sit here awkwardly when I leave. So I'm going to do that, guys. Might run our old. Oh no, I've got a funny video for you. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Bye.
Wir betreten feuertrunken himmlische dein Heiligtum. Deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode streng geteilt. Alle Menschen werden Brüder, wo dein sanfter Flügel weilt.